Max Verstappen's dominance of F1 since 2022 is unprecedented. His 75.9% win rate since the start of the new ground effect era is almost unbelievable. He pulled off a previously unimaginable season in 2023, winning all but 3 races and scoring more than double the points of his second-place teammate Sergio Perez. However, for the past 3 seasons, we've been told that Red Bull have the best car, by a long way, and if you put any other half-decent driver into it, they do exactly what Max has done. Now, I'm no Max Verstappen fan, I'm not a Red Bull fanboy or anything, but that narrative surprises me. So, today on Don't At Me, I'm going to ask you the question, is Max Verstappen underrated? I'm George, this is F1 Reverse, and on this video more than ever, please don't at me. First things first, a few of you noticed a bit of a break in content a couple of weekends ago, and it's because I was at the Le Mans 24 Hour. My ticket, my assorted crap that I got given over the weekend, it was incredible. I had an amazing time, and if you ever get the chance to go, I thoroughly recommend it. I came back a broken man from how tired I was. It took us 20 hours to get home. We left on Monday at 9 a.m. and I didn't get home until 5 a.m. on Tuesday. The traffic was hell and the ferry was packed with England fans as well, and it was just a whole thing. But the actual race was unbelievable. We had grandstand tickets right on the finish line, a full view of the podium at the end as well. The sound of those Le Mans cars, I mean the Cadillac hypercar in particular, was unbelievable. I was almost deaf by the end of the weekend, but it was insane. It's a bit of a travesty that Toyota didn't win, and they should have, and the Ferrari car that spun the Toyota around getting a 5-second penalty was an absolute joke. Like, how is that only a 5-second penalty in a 24-hour race? It just means absolutely nothing. But incredible time. Definitely go if you get the chance. Okay, let's talk about Max Verstappen. So, like I said when I started off, I'm not a Max Verstappen fan. And I actually probably call myself a McLaren fan. I really like Oscar Piastri, ever since that tweet about Alpine. How can you not love the guy? And Lando Norris as well, I've really enjoyed his career. There's a McLaren duck. Is that going to be in focus? Yep, there you go. McLaren duck, Oscar Quackastri. That was awful, I'm sorry. Anyway, Max Verstappen, not a fan, but the treatment he receives really surprises me. The Red Bull car is incredible, and certainly last season, I think if anyone had been in it, they could have won. Sergio Perez picked up loads of second places until he had his slump in form. And if Max hadn't been in that car, then Sergio would have been winning, or, you could probably have thrown a reasonable number of the better drivers on the grid into it. Someone like a Carlos Sainz or a Charles Leclerc or a Lewis Hamilton or Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, that kind of caliber of driver into that car, then yes, they could have won. But in 2021, when he won his first title, 2022, and now this season, that hasn't really been the case. So my question is Max Verstappen underrated? I probably don't need to start this off by listing Max Verstappen's accomplishments because you probably know most of them already. 3 drivers' titles in the last 3 seasons, across 2 different technical regulations, is incredibly impressive. And at the moment, it looks like he's probably going to win a 4th one this season as well. Last year, he recorded the highest win rate ever over an entire F1 season by a driver in the sport's history. That's impressive. No doubt, but the stats behind those trophies need to be explained. Since the start of 2021, Max has started 76 races. That's up to the Spanish Grand Prix. I'm recording this on Thursday. I've got no idea how he's going to do on Sunday. He'll probably win though, and you can add that to the stats. In that time, since the start of 2021, he has won 51 of those 76 race starts. He came 2nd in 12 of them, came 3rd in 1 of them, and had 6 other point finishes and 6 DNFs. He's never finished outside the points since the start of 2021, while he's finished the race. Since he claimed his first victory in 2016, he's won more races than Lewis Hamilton, 61 to Lewis's 60. And that was round 5 in the 2016 season, so Lewis dominated the sport for another 4.5 years. They were tightly contested in 2021, and then 22, 23, 24 has kind of been Max's territory. But nonetheless, he's overtaking Lewis while he's had those 4.5 years where Lewis has just completely washed the competition. Now, I'm not trying to take anything away from Lewis, he's obviously an incredible driver, but what Max has done these past few years is, quite frankly, unbelievable. And yet, a lot of his success is attributed to the Red Bull team and not his driving. Now, that did happen to Lewis for some extent. Obviously, everyone knows that Mercedes, and when 2014 and the turbo hybrid engines came in, they had the best engine by a long way, and that was credited for Mercedes' success. But certainly with the English media, Lewis seemed to get a lot more credit for his achievements than Max has been for his. Now, it's easy to see why people are crediting the Red Bull team as well. Max has dominated races over the past few seasons, at times finishing more than half a minute ahead of his competition, sometimes even more than that as well, and it has looked like he's been driving in a different class of car. But that field that he was beating by half a minute included his teammate driving the exact same car. Red Bull have Adrian Newey, or they had him anyway, and he's a huge asset in car development. He's a proven winner, and everyone knows that if you've got Adrian Newey on your design team, things are just going to go a bit smoother for you. Hell, they even have the fastest pit stops, which, though a small thing, does make a difference, and it really shows just how well organisationally Red Bull are run behind the scenes. Obviously, things at Red Bull are run really well, and they deserve all the credit in the world for all the success that they've got, and this is a team sport after all. But the problem with all of this for me is that Sergio Perez driving the exact same car hasn't dominated 2 world championships and fought his way incredibly to a tightly contested third, whatever your opinion is on the final race. Sergio Perez hasn't been winning races by half a second or more on the regular. So, has the perceived brilliance of Red Bull's F1 cars over the past couple of seasons mean that we've really underestimated and undervalued Max Verstappen's achievements? With the current grid tightening up and Lando Norris really challenging for race wins in recent races, Verstappen's brilliance has started to shine. His last 3 wins were not easy, and he had to be perfect in all of them to secure them. In Imola, any mistake, anything that would have cost Max Verstappen a second worth of race time would have cost him the win to Lando Norris. In Canada, Norris was faster again than Verstappen, and if McLaren had pitted him a lap earlier than they did behind that early safety car, he would have held track position ahead of Verstappen a couple of laps later when they did pit him, and he would have won that race from the front, I have no doubt about that. In Spain, Max was perfect again. After George Russell made that excellent move into turn 1, he managed to stay on the tail of Russell, pass him really quickly, and from there managed to open a gap. And Max did that on used soft tyres while Russell had brand new soft tyres on. But when Lando Norris, who was probably in a faster car than Max for the whole weekend, came up behind George Russell on brand new soft tyres while George was on brand new softs, he couldn't get past him and lost 4 seconds of race time. And those 4 seconds of race time cost him the race win. But it's easy to say that Max was perfect or excellent and won the race because of it. It's the comparison to his teammate where this underestimation of what he's achieved really starts to shine. Sergio Perez has this perceived habit of getting in a bad run of form. Last season, we all looked at Monaco and from then on said, oh, he's in a slump, he's not doing very well anymore. And in qualifying, he did struggle. After the 2023 Miami Grand Prix, where Max Verstappen came from way back on the grid to beat Sergio by tens of seconds in an incredibly impressive performance, Sergio wouldn't make it to Q3 for 6 more races. In Monaco was where things really went badly for him, and he had an absolute howler of a race, very similar to his Monaco Grand Prix this year actually. Sergio did eventually manage to get back into Q3 in Hungary, which was 6 races later. And from then on, when both cars were in Q3, which was 9 of the last 12 races, he had an average deficit to Verstappen of 0.719 seconds. Now that's a pretty big teammate-to-teammate deficit, especially when you look at the rest of the grid. Perez's season this year is following quite a similar path, or so it seems. He started strongly, he seemed to be contesting for podiums, and he got plenty actually in the first few races. But then Monaco happened, and he's had a couple of bad races, and again we've been labelling it as, Perez is in this slump and this inconsistent thing going on. But how he's done compared to his teammate over this season as a whole has been far more impressive than last year. Of the 10 races, both cars have featured in Q3 7 times, with Perez failing in Imola, Monaco and Canada. He made it back into Q3 in Spain. His deficit to Verstappen in those 7 qualifying sessions has been an average of 0.334 seconds. So Perez has over halved his average deficit to Verstappen from the start of this season compared to the end of last season, and that's incredibly impressive. He's really stepped it up big time this year. But he's sat in 5th in the Drivers' Championship at the moment, whereas last season, even with those terrible qualifying performances, he finished 2nd. The rest of the grid have caught up, and the consensus is that Red Bull no longer have the fastest car. That fastest car now belongs to McLaren, and people are saying it's probably been like that for 3 races or so now. And yet, still Max has won 7 of the first 10 races. The BBC's Andrew Benson recently said that what he hears from the paddock, from the kind of bosses in the paddock, the team bosses and team principals, is that Max Verstappen himself is worth 2 to 3 tenths of a second over every single other driver on the grid. So you put him in a car next to anyone and they reckon, perfect pole laps from both of them, Max is still going to be 2 to 3 tenths of a second faster because he's just that skilled a driver. Toto Wolff also recently said that Max wins races, not Red Bull. And I know that he's been trying to get him to join his team for a long time and kind of woo him and impress him, but the sentiment still sticks. It is Max that's winning these races, not Red Bull, and that's especially true this year. In 2022, a lot of people said Ferrari probably had the fastest car for most of the season, but it was still Max winning the races. It's not always obvious why Max is winning these races, and I think sometimes that's why we say it's the Red Bull car. It's not like Max is making these incredible overtaking maneuvers which are getting him wins, or driving on the absolute edge, kind of sliding all over the place and keeping it together. It's not quite so obvious how well he's driving as compared to older Formula 1 drivers, where you had cars which were all over the road all the time and sliding everywhere, and those who were incredibly skilled, you could say, Alain Prost held that car together incredibly, or Ayrton Senna did an amazing job keeping it on track. That's not so much a problem anymore, but getting everything out of a lap is incredibly challenging still, and that's what Max does. It doesn't look that impressive, but he's driving to perfection almost every single race and every single qualifying session. It's been easy to point at the RB whatever and say the car is amazing, so Max wins, but that just isn't the case anymore, and it hasn't been the case for 2 of his 3 world championships. Yes, the performance of a car has a huge effect on how fast a driver can drive. I'm not saying if you put Max Verstappen in a Sauber, for example, he's going to start winning races. But at the same time, if you put Zhou Guanyu into a Red Bull, he's not going to beat the field by over 30 seconds. At the moment especially, Max is completely outdriving the RB20, and his consistent perfection on race weekends is why he holds a 69-point lead in the Drivers' Championship. Last season, Red Bull did have the best car, but maybe it wasn't as good as Max was making it look. We saw Max winning all the time, blamed it on the car and moved on and said, the RB19 is incredible, no one's going to be able to beat them, let's wait till 2026, a lot of people were saying. But maybe we should have been focusing on the driver and just how well he was driving all the time. So, is Verstappen underrated? Perhaps, but maybe a better way of phrasing it would be that he's just underappreciated. And what he's doing now is, honestly, incredible. Obviously, things at Red Bull are run weird. Why can't I say that? With the current grid tightening up and Lando Norris really challenging for race wins in recent Why can't I?